All right, kicking off the tight end rankings at the very top is just one guy in tier 1. You guys all know who it is. It is Brock Bowers, arguably the greatest tight end prospect of all time, and just immediately came in and started dominating like a wide receiver from day one. And he's doing this with some abysmal quarterback play too. So hopefully whatever rookie they draft next year is going to be better and make this entire offense better to boost the scoring opportunities. But Bowers is amazing. He's very elite. As of right now, he's definitely fantastic, and I see no reason why that shouldn't continue for the next 10 years or so. Tier 2 is a set of two more young to younger players that I think could both vie for a tier 1 placement by the end of the year, but they just currently don't feel as elite as Brock Bowers right now, and that is Trey McBride and TJ Hawkinson. Honestly, I wanted to so badly put Trey McBride in tier 1. I still am considering doing so right now as I am sitting here recording this video. He has paced Brock Bowers basically every week in points per game, and while Bowers is 1 to 2 points per game better, McBride is still just so good. He's still only 24 years old, and he's still growing in his career and in this offense. He is without a doubt the tight end 2 in Dynasty right now. And then we all know TJ Hawkinson's story. For 2 years in a row from 2022 to 2023, he put up over 900 yards and 5 to 6 touchdowns on over 125 targets. In 2023 would have been over 1,000 yards had he not gotten hurt late in the year. And that's really it. We're just waiting for TJ Hawkinson to fully recover from the ACL injury, and the belief is that he'll return to being an elite fantasy option. His first week back was very encouraging. He only played 45% of snaps, but he did see 4 targets, and a part of me has to think that if TJ Hawkinson was fully healthy, he would have been the one catching the game-winning touchdown at the end of the game, not Josh Oliver. So it might still be a rocky end of the 2024 season for Hawk as he's getting reintegrated to just playing football, but 2025 and beyond still at just 27 years old is looking strong as ever. Now, tier 3 is a very simple tier. It is another tier that is just one guy in George Kittle, mainly because of how insane he's been for fantasy football this year as the tight end 1 overall, averaging 18 PPR points per game. And we really can't be picky when it comes to tight ends in Dynasty. If you're producing, even at an older age, you're probably going to be valued as a top 5 guy. And that's what we have with George Kittle right now. I am curious to see how his production looks with Christian McCaffrey back. Maybe he's not scoring as many touchdowns because CMC is just as good in the red zone. So maybe his production does fall a little bit. But with Brandon Ayuk out still for the rest of the year, Kittle should still be heavily involved. And then for 2025 and beyond, is Deebo Samuel there? How does Brandon Ayuk look returning from the injury? Does Christian McCaffrey get reined in a bit to keep him healthy in terms of touches? I don't really know, but for right now, I'm just enjoying the fantasy points from George Kittle, and he's a top 5 Dynasty tight end. Moving into tier 4, this is where tiers really start getting much bigger as the separation between players gets really, really small at the tight end position. So tier 4 is a bunch of young or younger guys that have shown some immense upside, but really feel capped in just some way, mostly because they're not usually the first or second option on their team, or they're not consistently the first or second option on their team on a weekly basis. So Kyle Pitts, Sam Laporta, David Njoku, Dalton Kincaid, Tucker Kraft, and Cade Otton. If you have any of these guys, I'm sure that you feel simultaneously happy to have an every week starter. You don't really have to think about it every week, but also you're probably immensely frustrated at the roller coaster of production that they can give you on a weekly basis. Kyle Pitts has actually been more productive more often than not this year, and October was a really, really fun month for him for fantasy football, but the floor is also legitimately 0 fantasy points on the box score, and his usage can be so frustrating every single week. At least he's still one of the younger players in this tier though. Despite being in year 4 of his career, he is still just 24 years old, so there's still plenty of time for him to develop into a much larger role, especially as Kirk Cousins continues to get healthy and get integrated more into this Falcons offense. Sam Laporta has been another frustrating player this year, but I think you just have to ride this season out and hope that he gets either more involved later on this year or heading into next season. He's just too talented to pivot off of unless you're going up to get Brock Bowers or Trey McBride. The same goes for Dalton Kincaid and Tucker Kraft. We just don't have a tight end 1 overall rookie season to fall back on for these two, like we do with Sam Laporta. But they're both very young, they're both very talented, and both can be good when everybody on their team is healthy, but also be very good when other players on their team get hurt. So they're both just fine tight end ones. And then David Njoku and Cade Otton feel like similar players, just at different ends of their careers. Both of these guys are very productive right now because of the loss of their team's wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 in Cade Otton's case. Njoku just really needs to not play with Deshaun Watson like ever again in his career, and we'll see what the Browns do to replace Amari Cooper next year, assuming that they do. But until then, Njoku is a very good fantasy tight end in the prime of his career right now. Cade Otton is the one that is vaulted into this tier because of what he's done 3 weeks in a row now without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, which is both simultaneously amazing because he's literally winning people weeks with 8 to 9 catches for 80 plus yards and a touchdown basically over each of the past 3 weeks. But what happens when Mike Evans returns in a couple weeks? What happens when Chris Godwin returns next year? Does Otton fade back into just being a streamable tight end 2 option, or does this breakout signify more usage and volume because he has shown that he can handle it? I would not be shocked if he was Trey McBride 2.0 and a top 5 guy a year from now, but I also wouldn't be shocked if he was just Mike Gesicki, who is only benefiting from the loss of other wide receivers. Okay, now we get into tier 5, which are just the guys that are going to score fantasy points. They are reliable to score fantasy points, but they don't really have the sexy name appeal that everybody else above them has, and most of these guys are also kind of old. So Mark Andrews, Jake Ferguson, Evan Ingram, and Travis Kelce make up this tier. Besides Ferguson, everyone is 29 years or older, and they're all currently averaging between 8.5 to 12.5 fantasy points per game. Actually, they're all averaging over 10 points per game on the season, except for Mark Andrews, but since week 5, Andrews is actually averaging 13 points per game as he's further removing himself from his season-ending injury last year and reestablishing himself in this Ravens offense. Honestly, Mark Andrews is the one that I had the most trouble ranking in this entire top 25 because personally, I still believe that he is a top 5 dynasty tight end, but I also understand the massive risk associated with him that's soon to be a 30-year-old player next year coming off of a bad season by his standards, plus the addition of Deontay Johnson now, which may or may not matter if he's not on the team next year, but maybe he is, and that's just another target stealing away looks from Mark Andrews. But I do believe that he is the one player in this tier that is capable of vaulting everybody in tier 4 and joining George Kittle in tier 3 by the end of 2024. Now, tier 6 is another big tier of just fantasy tight end 2s. All of the guys that you don't really want to start every single week, but you also don't feel completely disgusted by if you have to start them every week, but really you want a better option than these guys. Dallas Goedert, Cole Kmet, Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki, Pat Freiermuth, and Dalton Schultz. Not really much more to say about this tier. Any one of them can have a big spike week with 8 or more targets or multiple touchdowns or both in some circumstances, but that's not who these guys are, and that's not anywhere close to being reliable weekly for these players. I also don't think that anyone in this tier really grows out of this archetype, so they just kind of are who they are, and that's that. Although I will say I am hopeful for Mike Gesicki as a free agent this year. Maybe he's shown enough to go get a bigger role somewhere else, or maybe he stays in Cincy, they let T. Higgins walk, and Gesicki just retains this like wide receiver 2 role that he has right now. I don't know. Maybe that's just my Penn State love and bias, but like imagine if Travis Kelce retires this year, the Chiefs then sign Mike Gesicki as his replacement. That could work. Make it happen, Andy Reid. Let's keep this Mike Gesicki train going. And then to close everything out in tier 7, just to round out the top 25, is all of the young guys who maybe could develop into something or maybe won't develop into anything. Time will tell. JT Sanders, Isaiah Likely, Ben Sinnott, Theo Johnson, and Luke Musgrave. I will shout out JT Sanders of this group. I do think that he has the ability to climb into tier 4 as a semi-reliable weekly starter by next season. I mean, he kind of has been. He's scoring identically to Sam Laporta over the last 4 weeks, and especially now with Carolina just fire selling their entire wide receiver room, it feels like Sanders could have that rookie second half bump that we normally associate with wide receivers. So go buy Jatavion Sanders for super cheap right now while you still can. So there we have it, an updated top 25 dynasty tight end rankings now that we're a little over halfway through the 2024 season. Drop any and all questions in the comments down below. Feel free to continue calling me an idiot if you want, but make sure that you're subscribed either way for more Dynasty content for the rest of 2024 and into 2025.